Welcome to the Verso Alto podcast, a Catholic podcast for teens by teens. Today we are talking about The Chosen, seasons 1 through 3. Today we have Kateri, Sophia, Theresa, me, Vincent, and we are joined by a very special guest, Jonathan Roumie. I'm just kidding.
Oh, yeah. Well, Jonathan, if you're listening, we would love to have you on our podcast. Just let us know. Go to Verso Alto Podcast at Gmail. We'll send you a link. Anyway, it's one of our favorite shows, and we love talking about it. It never gets old. I think it's comical sometimes when someone says, I can't believe you're watching a story about Jesus. You already know what's going to happen. But really, I love the way Dallas and the writers and even the casting directors have taken this artistic license and made it so enjoyable and interesting to watch. So let's talk about season 1 and what you guys thought. When you first started the first episode and saw that, what were your thoughts?
Well, when I started the first episode, I was a little bit confused because we didn't start off with Jesus or any of the apostles. We started off with Mary Magdalene. And
yeah.
Okay, I could be completely
Peter.
wrong, but does season 1 begin? Maybe it seems but begin with Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane with the snake.
no,
Or is
No.
that in the later?
no,
That's way later.
Never mind.
But so I was a little bit confused because I was like, well, where is Jesus?
I think Jesus was a little confused too, because in his interview with Bishop Barron, first episode, he says one word, Mary.
Yeah.
And he goes, really a big speaking role for me, which I think is funny. But Bishop Barron had to remind him, it's called The Chosen, not the Messiah.
But it was an impactful episode because even though it was kind of, compared to other episodes, it was a slow start to the show and the season.
Mm-hmm.
There was so much that happened in it with one, our first look at Jesus, even if it was at the very end,
Mm-hmm.
but just the way that they depicted the healing of Mary. It wasn't anything big or theatrical. It was just kind of like it happened, like a huge weight had been lifted off her shoulder.
Like needed to be called by him.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's so simple but powerful. Like in the scene, you just see Jesus standing there, and she's never really seen him, or she just being healed of having these 7 demons, and she just goes to him, surrendering herself. There's no words spoken, but it's just so powerful how she just recognizes who Jesus is. She knows that she needs to run, embrace him, and that she's going to be safe and comforted by him in her distress. I just thought that was so cool. That it made it really intense, but just loving, and just how strong Jesus' power is over her.
I had heard a lot about this show before I even saw the first episode. And then when I was watching the first episode, I got halfway through and went, whatever. And then I thought, oh, okay, you're going to have to give it another shot, So then I watched all the way through the first episode, and still, sorry, Dallas, but I really wasn't impressed. And then I finally got it, I think, because maybe it was because I just really love Peter so much that I couldn't imagine him having a gambling, and that he wouldn't listen to his brother Andrew, and that, I can't imagine the 4 apostles in a bar, So I was just like, are you kidding me? Everybody's talking about the show and they're thinking it's all. But then I got to tell you though, Sophia, after the first episode, after I saw it the 3rd time around, maybe 3rd time's a charm, I got it. And I'm like, I was bawling. I was watching Mary and Jesus, and I thought, oh my gosh. Yeah. I couldn't wait. And then after that, I couldn't wait to see what he did with Peter, because I'm like, Jesus, you got to turn around because you got your work cut out for you. You got to go back into that bar. because Peterson, and so, and those other four fishermen. But what about you, Kateri?
I absolutely chosen the first episode was definitely a shock, and I was like, okay, wow, this is not what I was expecting. But I think we often see Jesus as this figure who is almighty and all powerful, and of course he is, but we don't always look to see his human side as well, because he's 100% God and 100% man. But sometimes we forget about that man part. And I think The Chosen does a really, really great job of showing that human side of him and how, like, he was such a cool guy. And I mean, in the show, he's making jokes and he's messing around with his buddies. And I think it's so cool to be able to see that dynamic with him and his apostles.
One of my favorite scenes from the whole show, or at least what I've watched so far, is actually in that episode, because we're seeing Mary going through all these different emotions, trying to decide how could I get out of this ditch that I'm in. And so she walks to the edge of the cliff and is looking down, but then she sees a bird, and she just kind of recognizes something in that bird, and something calls her to follow it. And so she's just walking back into town, looking up at the bird the entire time, completely trusting it. I mean, she could have run into a wall while looking up, but because she just completely trusted it, she knew that nothing was going to happen to her that would hurt her, because she just kind of felt to it.
Oh, it wasn't an ordinary bird, was it? Wasn't it a white dove?
No, it was an ordinary bird.
Was it an ordinary bird?
Just like
I thought
how
it was a white dove.
Jesus was an ordinary person. It was just an ordinary. I don't think it was a dove. I mean, you could look.
Terry's going to look that up right now. Okay, well, let's get on to all right, so we've now seen a couple of the apostles and Mary, and then episode 2 goes into a little bit more about Matthew. What do you think of the character of Matthew?
So at first, I started watching it a little bit later than some of my family members, but I was confused at first who I kept mixing up the apostle, but then I would be able to figure it out, but then it would just confuse me because they all have beards and all type of thing. And then
Oh my goodness, they all do not look the same.
okay, they don't all look the same, but it was I think it was James the last,
Yeah.
and then maybe it was Bartholomew and Thomas, but something I don't know. I just kept getting them mixed up.
Yes,
and
I
then,
think Nathaniel and Thaddeus
Yes.
look identical. Yes, they do.
yes. Anyway,
Yes.
but then my first thing of Matthew and his whole you see him working as a tax collector, and these people just read everything and disappointed in him, and then just comes up to him, and Matthew just drops everything and leaves. And I didn't like Matthew very much at first,
Yeah, he grows on you, kind of.
but
a lot.
It's so funny the way that he interacts with Thomas, and how Thomas just gets so irritated.
You are jumping way ahead. You are into the next season, girlfriend. All right. So, what did you think of Matthew, Vincent?
I was a little bit hesitant on how they decided to portray him at first, just because it wasn't really how I had thought of it. But as you keep watching, you kind of start to realize this makes sense. You wouldn't really have thought of Matthew as the underdog, because he was one of the first ones to be called, but nobody really liked Matthew because he had been a tax collector and had betrayed the Jews. And so I never really thought of him as the underdog, because he had always just been such a prominent, he got to write a gospel.
Right. And it's a long
And
one.
it's a long one too.
Yeah. He has a lot of detail in it.
Yeah. But when you start to think about it, it really makes sense how they decided to portray him.
Yeah.
I thought you were
Well, I don't know. I think they were all pretty young, in their 30s or 40s.
but Matthew, I mean, that actor, looks young, but
I think it's because he doesn't have a beard.
Yeah.
I mean, at the beginning,
also he does look younger.
Yes. Yeah. But, well, and
I wouldn't
yeah.
think of Matthew in my head
Mhm.
if I was imagining like the calling of Matthew.
Mhm.
I never thought of him that young.
I like how
Everybody was young once.
I like how
You and I are having a serious problem with age. At the last podcast, she said, she asked Rogan, she goes, wasn't he old when he did that? And I said, well, how old is old? And she goes, I don't know. I think 55. And I'm like, I don't know. No way.
No. And then how old was he? I was like 55. And then you asked me,
How old is old?
and I hesitated. Thank you.
Because you're like, how old are you, Teresa?
And then I said like 9.
Yeah, 90 is old.
I like
Yeah.
I like how I like how even though they show Matthew as like he doesn't like he doesn't like getting dirty or like getting into the grimy places. They show him like adopting a dog that's off the street and being nice to him. Like even though the dog is probably dirtier than anything he's ever like been close to, he decides just to it's another living thing. Like
And it also
needs
protects
help.
him, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
it protects
Yeah,
him.
that's amazing.
But then he has to
Well,
feed it, and it's sad.
The dog doesn't care that he's a tax,
Yeah, that's true.
you know, and he still protects him, which I think is awesome because that's how animals are. They don't judge. You know? Speaking of creatures that don't judge, what about the episode with Jesus and the children? What did you think of that one?
That's so cute.
I understand why they didn't, but I didn't. It wasn't one of my favorites because it just kind of felt like they really got the ball moving with the first 2 episodes and then it stopped. Like someone was just there stopping it because it was kind of it seemed abrupt and kind of random because like he had called all these people, but then where did they go?
Right.
I can understand why they did it, but it just didn't really
Lay in the foundation. But you know, that's also another funny thing is if you don't think about it right away. So this is like the 3rd episode of the 1st season. Okay. And all throughout the 3 seasons, Jesus disappears and nobody knows where he is. He just goes off on his own. Like he goes camping. You know what I'm saying? And then he hangs out with like locals. And they're like, we still don't know where he is. And then suddenly he comes back. I think that's why they gave us the episode of Jesus and the children. That way we know, you know what? He just went away to pray. And he encounters a lot of people at different villages. And, you know, so if you're wondering where he is, refer back to episode 3, where he hangs out with children. You know, I did think it was kind of random when I first saw it because I was like, you finally got some momentum going. And now after a fact, even in the 3rd season when people were like, well, we don't know where Jesus is. I'm like, what do you mean you don't know where he is? You know, you have to put like a LoJack on the guy and find out.
Find yourself following the gospel. Like, okay, this is what happened. But then in the chosen, it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen next. Which I think forget, like, the apostles are writing down these events, but the chosen really gets into the nitty-gritty of everyday life of Jesus.
Right.
I think it slows us down.
Oh, that's good. Good
was,
point.
What was doing it?
Right.
You know, he would have encountered little children. Like there's little children in Jerusalem, not just.
Well, he also gives them like credibility because children and women at that time weren't really thought of as having any value whatsoever. So I think that's also a nice way of looking at it. So, all right. So then after the episode of Jesus and the children, he calls Peter and Andrew tells him they found the Messiah. And I love the fish. Oh my goodness gracious. I was wondering how they were going to do the location of fish and stuff like that. And it was so real. Anybody ever go fishing? You ever catch that many fish?
No.
Have you ever wanted to catch that many fish?
Catching one fish, especially dip netting, that's something that I guess it might be similar to the apostles lowering their nets in, but in Alaska we have these giant nets. We attached to metal, and you put them in the water, and then the salmon's through them. And just doing one fish is hard enough. It's flopping everywhere, and there's blood everywhere, and fish guts, and
It's
that's
heavy.
hard enough.
They're
It's
very
so
heavy.
heavy with one fish. And the fact that the apostles digging their fingers in these nets with thousands of fish, amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you also have the current of the Kenai River,
Yes.
Upper River, or whatever current of any river it is, trying to pull you and your fish back, you know. Yeah, I thought that was wonderful. And I liked how the multiplication of fish paid off Peter's taxes. And that was important, you know, where he got himself in a pickle, you know, with, I know, Peter. Yeah, with Quintus. Okay, so we're moving on to episode 5 about the wedding feast at Cana.
Wow, that was
It was,
funny.
I
I loved that.
One of my favorite parts of that episode is at the very beginning when Peter and Andrew are walking to go join the apostles, and they're arguing the entire way about like Peter being nervous, but then he's like, I'm not nervous, you're nervous. And then in the end, the apostles have been standing like right there, and Peter's like, how much have you heard? And they're like, enough.
Or they're carrying their lunch and they're
Yeah.
not sure if they
Yeah.
should be carrying
Yeah.
lunch. That's so funny. Well, and I loved the part that the Blessed Mother played with the family of the bride
Yeah.
and how they just were so worried about appearances and what the other family thought. And, you know, you have a joining of two families together. It's so sad if you have something like that weighing on you, this day of joy that you're supposed to have. And I thought it was just beautiful how she shows up to help, and then suddenly things become beautiful, you know, like the trellis, and everything seems to start working because the Blessed Mother's there, like helping out. And then, of course, she helps out again, this first miracle. So this also brings in the introduction of Thomas, right? So what'd you think of Thomas?
I was very confused when he first showed up, because until they had like clarified that it was Thomas, I was like, some random guy, like not surprised.
Another guy with a beard.
And then like his partner or his
Raina.
future wife or whatever she was, I'm not sure. But
The vintner.
yes,
Yes.
their whole relationship in that episode was very weird.
Yeah.
And I was a little bit confused by it. I was like, so is it like a business thing? Is it like a marriage thing? Like, I was very confused in that first episode. And I like how they went on to clarify that in the second season, because like it kind of leaves you like, so Thomas doesn't really have everything together.
None of them do.
Well, yeah.
Which is good, because, I mean, I'm looking around the table and I'm twice your age and I still don't have it all together. So just cut yourself some slack. You're beating yourself up sometimes.
I also,
You're
you know.
only twice, right?
I'm pretty sure that, yeah. Pretty sure.
I also like how Thomas, as they were getting to load up, Thomas starts doubting if 3 things of wine will be
Right.
enough.
He's already doubting. Yeah.
My
Mm.
favorite part of that scene, though, is when Jesus, Andrew, and I think Peter, and maybe there's another apostle, but they're invited to dance. And then one of them comments that Andrew dances like a sick donkey on hot coal. It's just so funny. Like, they're the personification of the apostle, just their personality that we don't get necessarily in the Bible, but in the Chosen. It's hilarious.
Right.
They're
Their
ordinary
humanity
people.
comes out, you know, and then you feel like, wow, you know, I, as a Catholic Christian, I'm still chosen, but I'm still human, and I may not dance like donkey on fiery coals, but
donkey.
a stick donkey. That's very specific too.
I also like in that episode the exchange during the wedding feast between Mary Magdalene, Thaddeus, maybe you'd have to check on that one.
Mhm.
But Jesus is playing games with the children that are there, and Thaddeus or whoever it is says they don't know. They don't even know who he is or why he's here. And Mary tells him, and they just have this beautiful exchange about why Jesus called them and how nobody knows who he is yet, but soon everybody will.
Right. Or will hear who he is, but not accept that. Right. Anything else about the wedding? So this is something I didn't know about Jewish weddings. They're supposed to have wine that lasts at least a week.
Yeah. I was very confused as to why they only brought
why did they
3
need so much wine? And then you come to a week.
Yeah.
Wedding celebration.
Holy moly, that's a lot of
And you
wine.
invite everybody. Like, you will find someone that lives near you is somehow related to you.
Well,
And
that makes so much more
everybody's
sense.
there.
You know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's, I mean, there's huge events. And if you don't have enough wine, that's not a look at on you.
No, yeah, you need to save for a very long time for wine. Okay, so we go on to episode 6 when they incur the Ethiopian woman, and then they open up Zebedee's roof and lower the crippled man. What'd you think of that?
Totally forgot that Jesus lived in Egypt for the first 2 years of his life.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do forget those facts, you know. And I liked how Mary Magdalene helped them,
Yeah.
you know, get closer, you know, and the exchange that Jesus had with her, that, you know, great is your faith. And God bless him, but the scribes and Pharisees, those guys just are clueless. But the guys that they have casted for this, you really, Shmuel or whatever his name is, you have no problem hating him. You're like, oh my goodness gracious, you're an idiot, you know, or like, and so I'm sure, of course, it comes down later on, you know, he gets his moment to talk to Jesus, but at this time, he doesn't want to give him the time of day. And it's just like, all they want to do is like, he's doing this wrong or he's carrying on the Sabbath. And it's like, oh, you know, as a Catholic who's heard her whole life, it seemed like now that I'm older and I wonder, you know, is there any other day of the week that he cured people? Because why is it always on the Sabbath? Did he have to wait for the Sabbath? And it just seems to me that the apostle that wrote the Gospels had to be very specific about it, because those were the ones that mattered to the scribes and the Pharisees, and why they lost their minds and got their panties in a twist because of the Sabbath. And it was just like they couldn't get their small little mind. And so, you know, that was incredible. But I think one of the things that I love about this scene too is that she witnesses him cure a leper, and then she immediately runs to go get her friend.
Yeah.
You know, and doesn't stop there. Just goes and goes and goes until her and her friends lower him. I mean, I don't think I have friends that love me much, you know? I mean, have you ever thought about that? Like, oh my gosh, I hope my family loves me that much that they would do that. You know, I mean, that's a serious friendship. You know, must be somebody that they knew since they were little. That type of. So. Okay, and so it keeps going on with more like invitations, and then Jesus and Peter have lots of great exchanges. And finds out Jesus says he is the Messiah. So let's move on to season 2, the Sons of Thunder. Okay, they're going to Samaria or something like that, and right, and they're the Sons of.
Or that's the last.
The last episode is the woman at the well? Is it?
Yeah, the last
Or is the
episode.
last
Episode of season 1.
Okay, the last episode of season 1 is the woman at the well?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that was pretty.
That's an awesome.
That was a
Yeah.
great episode. Yeah.
One of the best parts of that episode is after the woman at the well has gone away, and Jesus is talking to his disciples, and his disciples were like, "We brought you back food," and Jesus was like, "I have food that you do not know of." And I think it was Thomas goes, "Who got you food?"
Oh, right.
I was so obsessed, like, where did you get this food? Like, completely oblivious to what Jesus is trying to say.
Which is part of why The Chosen is so great, because it's not strictly, like, it doesn't go line for line with the Bible, and that's like,
Right.
these little throwaway lines that just keep you entertained.
There was one character in season 1 that just broke my heart, and that was Nicodemus.
Oh,
yeah.
that scene.
That
Oh,
scene
Like
where
you're so close.
he was
yet
lost.
so
oh, I
far
know.
away.
Oh my gosh, I was bawling my head off. Yes, I cry. Not every episode, but you know, he knows he's the Messiah, but his wife and her comfort and trying to like explain to her how he knows and all of this stuff, and he can't leave her and all of their kids and grandkids to follow Jesus. He can't. He's like, and so, but he shows up there and he knows, and it's just like, your heart breaks because he got to spend that evening with him, on the roof and talk to him and get his questions answered. And he's and it was so, I love who they casted for Nicodemus, and I love him as an actor, and it's just brilliant. But or at least I completely identified with him on that, and it was beautiful, but so sad. And I think it's not the end of it though, because I know we're going to see Nicodemus a lot more. And then the woman at the well, that was very well casted too. She had such great energy, and and it was such a wonderful exchange that they had together. But anything else about the first season?
The scene with Nicodemus, watching that, and made me think of how much that's me, or, just knowing Jesus has something for us, but we're not willing to give up something that we need to take out of the way and see what it's like the picture of Jesus and the little girl. She's holding a small teddy bear, and Jesus is like, hand me that teddy bear, and he's this giant one behind him. Like, how much more does Jesus have to offer us? And we know what Jesus has to offer because we read through the Bible, we know the story. Nicodemus just having this conversation with Jesus, and he makes all these connections, knows who Jesus is. He's so unwilling to give up what he has to just receive so much more.
Yeah. Oh, all right. So back to the Sons of Thunder. And so John and James, Big James, get to plow a field, and they now have a title.
Yes.
Which is hysterical. And then, but they're all through Samaria, and Thomas meets him there. Yeah, suddenly, like, there's a whole bunch of people all together, and they're all starting to culminate together, right? I did like that exchange at the end when he got all the stuff for this huge meal. What was it? Matthew had to tell them all what to do, right? He said, Peter has to go get wine.
Yeah.
They all had to get assignments, and they all had to be told what to do by Matthew. Which I was Peter was like seething, He's like, and then they went to that family's house and had this huge meal, and then he healed him. And the Sons of Thunder plowed their field, which I thought was lovely. What a great surprise, And it's so funny too, because they thought they were doing something bigger than that, but what bigger job,
Funny how they think they know what's going to happen.
Oh, right.
Like, Jesus just like darling.
Yeah. And then the next episode brings in Nathaniel, the architect, which I thought was fun to watch because we never really get a background on all of these people, So, and then he was all by himself under the picture.
Yeah.
That just, amazes me. It was a beautiful scene too. Just him talking to the clouds. I mean, how many times have we just looking at the sky like, berating God. Like, do you see me? Do you hear me? Gosh. But it was the episode after that I thought that was phenomenal. All right, so that's the one where Jesus is healing all these people in this big
Oh,
Oh,
yes,
yeah.
yes.
and then they're all like, they have like a camp, and the Blessed Mother shows up, and then they all start bickering among themselves, I thought after a full day of healing people and everything, that one scene where Jesus is like, just walks by them all after they're
That's so
fighting.
oblivious.
Right. And he just says good night and is exhausted, and the Blessed Mother gets up and she like washes his feet and like kind of tucks him in, and
Yeah.
he's like, thank you, Emo. And then he says his prayers still before he goes to bed. He's God. And he still says his prayers before he goes to bed. And he's exhausted after healing thousands of people all day long. And everybody else is just bickering themselves about who's more important. Gosh, keep going. Oh, John the Baptist. All right, what do you think about the guy who plays John the Baptist?
I like him.
The personality of John. He's sassy and like, I don't know, it's just hilarious the way he talks to Jesus about one-on-one and about the Sanhedrin and all these things. Like, oh my gosh, and he had no idea what he was saying. So
I like in the first season when Nicodemus goes to talk to John, and John just kind of twists the conversation and like fires things back. He's like, "What are you here to do? Like, I thought you were here to question me."
Right. Yeah. Well, and then the exchange between Jesus and John, and that word soon, there's that word again. When will you do? And John wants to know, when are you going to do what you were meant to do? And he goes, soon. That's just a very different word. And then that word comes up numerous times as the seasons go on. When is Jesus going to be here? When is Jesus going to? Soon. And then of course the apostles catch on and they start using that word too, which I find comical.
I
But
also like how earlier in this season when Philip joins them and they're all kind of like, "Oh, he follows crazy John."
right.
But
Well,
Philip, he's really the most understanding and like he accepts Matthew and
oh yeah.
he's
Yeah.
and like he's kind of this mysterious kind of guy who speaks in riddles, and he really is the most wise and knowledgeable of all of them.
he's relaxed. Like he just allows, see the tension between some of the books. He just
And when Jesus gets taken for questioning by the Romans, he's just relaxed. He's like, he said he'd be back, so
Right.
he's gonna be
Exactly.
back.
It seems like he's got faith.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's grounded in it.
Yeah.
And I think that also comes from following John for a while.
Yeah, definitely.
So that prepared him. And when Jesus does get taken for questioning and they are all freaking out, Peter is such a hothead. I don't know. What do you think of the character of Peter? Do you think I can't say yes or no on the character himself. I mean, he portrays Peter quite well. I just imagined Peter to be bigger in stature.
I
You
think that my mom always comments on his clothes. She's like, "Why is his clothes so short?"
All right, I agree with her on that. It's like, dude, it has to be past the knee. I'm sorry.
I definitely think
Could you please go past the knee?
his whole personality is kind of like
It's a little short.
he's really confident. He's like, "Well, mine should be shorter," because like he definitely thinks of himself as like the best looking guy around. So I think that
And he's got his guns out, It's like,
Yeah.
okay, all right, yeah.
the whole way he stands, like,
Oh yeah, right. pushing his like muscles out and stuff. Yeah, didn't really, for somebody who prays to St. Peter, because I have a tendency to open my mouth and insert my foot all the time. St. Peter has been one of my patron saints for a while. And so when I saw him as casted for Peter, I'm like, that's an interesting choice. But
think
I mean,
that-
he grows on you. And by the end of season 3, you're like, dang,
It fits the
That was-
personality.
I think that
he really does.
what he lacks in size, he makes up for in personality.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
okay. Well, thank you, because I'm not a big person either. I'm a little person, but I just have when you see the Rock, or if you've gone to St. Peter's Square or the Basilica, and you see these massive statues of St. Peter and St. Paul, and they're over 12 feet tall, you just imagine in your head, this is somebody that's big in stature, not what Dallas has given us. Anyway, what do you think of Preemie? Like, the centurion
Was standing outside of
Preemie, or what?
Matthews.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's his name.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
The one who stands outside.
Preemie, that's his.
Matthews.
That's his.
Oh, I get it mixed up with the official and Quincy.
Oh, quite just.
Yeah.
Wow. That guy's perfectly
Oh no,
cast.
his name is Gaius.
Yes, Gaius.
Gaius.
Gaius. Preemie is his
Right?
rank.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that is a very elite group of soldiers that his title is.
Yeah.
Very few. So there's like one in each region.
Are you talking about
Gaius himself.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So when he tells like Peter or something to call him by his title,
Yeah.
he doesn't say Quintus.
Yeah.
Matthew calls him Quintus, but that's probably because they spent so much time together.
I liked him because he's definitely set in his beliefs, and he's not afraid to like voice what he believes.
Sure, because
Like-
he thinks all the
Yeah.
Jewish people are nuts.
And Quintus, Quintus he's funny because when he was questioning Jesus, like he seemed to kind of be on Jesus's side, like he didn't want him to be there, but then like he was like, but I don't like you.
He doesn't like
And
anybody.
then I really what's the guy? He's like that really, really like elite rank.
Oh,
and,
the
like,
guy that's the investigator?
Yeah, and he's got like that cape that he
Right.
wears.
Yeah,
and
he does. Right. I forgot his name. Yeah.
He's like cool.
I
Like,
like him
'cause-
a lot. Yeah. He's my favorite Roman so far.
Yeah.
Yeah. He does a really, really, really good job just following them around. I find it funny that he has no problem finding Jesus, yet his
Yeah.
apostles can't.
yeah.
That just kills me. And that scene where he's planning on coming down on sea for Simon the Zealot, that is just insane. The pool of Bethesda, oh my goodness, the beginning of that whole episode and showing the history
Yeah.
between the two brothers, and then how it splits, and one is just suffering and suffering, and the other one is working so hard to be stronger and stronger and stronger, and the other one's getting weaker and weaker and weaker, and it's just it breaks your heart. But then at the end, that was just amazing how one brother's conversion can create the other one's. Yeah. So that was
Also,
beautiful.
In this season, when Mary reverts back to like her old ways
Mhm.
because she had so scared by seeing the demonic, and just that scene with the demonic when he comes into the camp, when Jesus heals him, and then I forget what the exchange is, but when Simon, the zealot, when he arrives and Jesus has like already met him, and then Peter, or Simon as he is right now, like Jesus says something to Simon the zealot, and then Simon is like, huh? And Jesus is like, Simon, this is Simon, Simon, this is Simon. And then he just kind of moves on. But when Mary goes back to the town, and when Matthew and Peter find her, and she starts throwing up, but Matthew, he uses his handkerchief to get her
Right.
hair out of the way, and Peter just kind of realizes he really sympathizes with people.
Yeah. Yeah. Matthew is human.
Yeah.
You know, I think that was a very important exchange, sending those two together. And when Jesus sent everybody out 2 by 2, and you're wondering who's going to go with who, you know, you're like, oh crud. And he sent Peter and Judas, and I was thinking,
Oh my gosh, when you meet
gosh.
Judas,
When you-
like cursed on hand, and he's
adorable. Oh my
and he's
gosh.
just
And
like
you're like,
before the
oh,
big sermon
come
on the mount, and he
on.
goes up, and you just see this man, and you don't know who he is, and he's like helping the bear, he's super curious, and then he shakes Jesus, he's like, I'm Judas, and you're like,
I'm glad I wasn't the only one who was thinking that, you know. I'm like, oh, he's adorable. Yeah. So
And then you meet his
It's
business
just
partner,
once-
and he wants the best, or he wants to do the right thing, whereas his business partner had wanted to like rip off
right, exactly.
this guy, and Judas
Mhm.
wanted to do the right thing, and he left. And it was,
Yeah, yeah. Well, and the Sermon on the Mount build
I
up,
love that.
you know.
Yeah.
I loved that, you know, whatever Jesus needed, like Matthew, to write something. Here, I need Matthew, I need you. Matthew, I need you. And then all the other apostles were like, sure, I guess I should have paid attention in school so I could like learn how to read and write, you know. But writing all of that down, I think it was just funny, the exchange of, well, what do you think, Matthew? And he goes, well, it's a little much, you know. And then we start talking about it. I'm like, okay. But it was so well done. You know?
Women help pick out Jesus.
Oh, right. And they're
Uh-huh.
like, you know, like, Eden, I needed like a tiebreaker over here. What color should I be wearing? Crazy. Oh, so season 3, I have to say, is my favorite season so far. I cannot watch The Chosen without like Kleenex now, you know. But when he did send them out and told them that they were going to be able to like heal people and stuff, my favorite exchange between him and James, you know, how he is handy, has him healed, and he's like, how am I supposed to heal people? And I can't even, you know, be healed myself or something, you know. And I just think, you know, in all of our brokenness, God still loves us. Doesn't matter if we can walk or not, or we all have gifts to bring. Yeah. So when he sends Z and Matthew
And he
together,
doesn't know that Simon Zealot
and he doesn't know he's a tax collector.
Yeah.
Well, the look on his face was like, I'm sorry, what? You know? And then that's when Thaddeus and Nathaniel go together, because then you're like, I'm sorry, those two guys do look alike. But, and then little James and big James, they get those two men. But I was always getting John and Andrew mixed up until the end of the second season. And so every time, Andrew's kind of a hothead. He's like not the only one. Peter isn't totally a hothead. I think Andrew's kind of,
He has all these like anger issues.
yeah, but everything that happens with John the Baptist, Andrew loses his mind
Yeah.
like all the time. He's like, I gotta go save him. I have to save him.
Yeah.
God, you know, it's like, oh, they're definitely related, you know. Yeah, very well casted. But okay, so in season 3, let me see. Season 3, they did the Sermon on the Mount, right? And then, oh, that was near the end. Yeah.
When they go,
I think we should talk about Eden and Peter.
Oh, yeah. That was beautiful.
oh, and the
That
woman,
relationship.
but the fact that
She,
like her baby, and
Mhm.
like Peter didn't even know.
Yeah. 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 Oh, well, and it's just heartbreaking because it happens all the time.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, he comes home and she's lost the baby and she feels like she's let him down, but he doesn't know that he let her down. And I think the thing that Gaius tells him is hysterical. So it's like, you know, because when they're trying to fix the cistern and everything, and he's like, you know, well, you know, I have trouble at home. And he goes, well, there's a couple of words you need to learn, you know. You're right. I'm wrong. I'm sorry. And I'm like, wow, how come that's not in the Bible? You know, why were they holding on to that little nugget of truth? And I just thought, of course, a Roman had to come up with that. That was pretty good. I loved that. Yeah, and then a 2x2, and oh goodness, there's just so much that's going on. But I have to say that with Yosef, the scribe, and I forgot the other guy's name, the administrator of the temple synagogue at the time, whose daughter ends up getting sick.
Oh, yes. And
dies.
he's the one that's writing.
Right.
In the grave.
Yeah. Anyway, that exchange between the two of them, it's lovely. And I love how they're trying to build up confidence in each other and trust. And that there are people in the synagogue you can trust. And then as that built up through the woman with hemorrhages, oh my gosh.
Oh, God.
That one.
That was amazing.
Oh my word.
It's amazing.
So well done. So beautiful. And I loved how determined she was just to touch the fringe of his clothing. And
That's all I need.
it's all she needs. And her and Eden and how their relationship built from, cleaning the clothes. And you learned so much about Veronica from the exchange with her and Eden and how much she suffered for years, and given all of her money to doctors, and how her family is just like, disowned her.
Yeah.
And Eden's even asking her, how do you survive? And she goes, it just makes me weak. Well, still, how do you survive? If you're losing that much blood and you don't have any energy whatsoever.
Eden accepts her.
Yeah.
Even if she's like considered unclean, like Eden doesn't hide her love for her and accepts her as a woman.
Right.
I think that's cool. That's probably the first person that Veronica met after her Jean really showed her love.
Yeah.
And
And then she runs into Thaddeus and Nathaniel, and then they're like, we'll introduce you to our teacher, our rabbi, and stuff. So yeah, there's a lot that happens in that like second part, because you've got Yosef and the administrator of the synagogue taking them to their sick daughter, and then Gaius and Peter are working with Cistern, and then you've got Eden and Veronica and Thaddeus, and I mean, there's so much happening in that one scene, and then everything just stops, and you're like, but the exchange between Veronica and Jesus was my favorite one, where he said, and she says the word exhausted the same exact time, because he's like, my daughter, how have you, you must be. And then she just says exhausted, and he says exhausted. And then I was just like, oh yeah, it was like, I'm not kidding. I was like, Kleenex has just gotten some serious stock in my house now because of The Chosen. Thank you so much, Dallas. Really appreciate it. But that was so beautiful and everything. And afterwards, after he heals the little girl and she gets up, and then the scribes and Pharisees are like, who has touched somebody who is unclean? You're like, everybody raises their hand, and then they have to go to the water, and then they're having like chicken fights in the water where they're putting each other on their shoulders and laughing and having such a great time. And that humanity of Jesus is like, he goes running in the water going, I'm sorry, but I have to be part of this,
I'm stuck in the Bible, make sure that the healing of man's daughter did follow the healing of hemorrhage the way. And I was just thinking, like, that father, just like, my daughter is dying, but then everything's on Jesus' time.
Yeah.
Like, you have this healing and the woman who's bleeding, and Jesus takes the time to heal her. And while this is happening, when they go, the daughter is healed, because when they go back, they find her asleep. I think it's just so that, like, some people are so close to Jesus yet so far away, and some people just need to like touch the end of Jesus and that they're good.
The thing I found really odd about that episode was they were telling the father, you have to decide how many wailers,
That was so
women you
different.
want wailing and like flutes and stuff like that. I'm like, that's the prescription for the Jewish faith, that you have to like hire these people? I mean, okay, that just seems odd. But maybe that's just me. But anyway, so then after that episode is when Peter finds out that miscarried and she might not be able to ever have children again. Then he's angry. He is really, really. Oh yeah, yeah. So he's mad for a while, but he actually starts to build up that friendship with Gaius. They're like going into the Roman town, and he's like, "What are you doing here? You're gonna get killed." Has to get a cloak from Gaius and stuff and hide and like come out. So that was interesting. I like the way the two of them have been like growing in friendship and stuff. And then they have to go back to, because of the mess that Andrew and Philip have left in Jericho, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right, with their messed up preaching. And this is what happens when Jesus isn't the one preaching. People suddenly get the idea, all right, well, and this is what every priest and teacher, and sometimes it doesn't matter who it is, it could be a podcaster, people only hear what they want to hear. And then they will take your words out of context. But poor Philip and Andrew. So they go back to try and fix things. And then everybody and their dog shows up, and it's like at an impasse. And John has to stay behind to get Peter, who is very, very mad. And then John's mad that he has to stay behind to get Peter. And then
It's so funny when they wake up, because he was like, I had a week for you. Yeah,
it's like, I am not my brother's keeper. But yeah, it's pretty interesting. So, and then the feeding of the 5,000, which is awesome. And I loved how they did that. And still Peter is still mad. And it's so funny too, because like even Thomas goes, why am I not surprised by this? Or they say things like, I've seen all these miracles that you've done over and over again, and still I'm surprised that it's going to happen. And then they're in the boat, and storm and everything. And for someone who's a merchant marine and has been out in storms like that, sorry, you just don't get out of the boat. You don't. Andrew was right. He was grabbing onto him going, what are you thinking? That's your lifeline. The boat is your lifeline. So it wasn't only Peter that didn't have faith. It was everybody else who was grabbing him and telling him not to go out there and everything. So I think it's harsh to just put that on Peter, because the rest of them were like, but there was one line, John was like, looking at Jesus walking, and then Thomas is like, yeah, this is not surprising to me that this is not the only amazing thing I've seen today, but then of course Eden is getting cleansed at the same time, and that exchange that she has with the present God, do not let him. Peter saying that Jesus. Another crying episode. Gosh, amazing. I just can't wait to see what they're gonna come up with in season 4. So I'm a little worried because, they're going to crucify him, because we know what happens.
I mean, there are 7 seasons planned to be made, so that's not going to happen for a while.
Really?
Yeah.
Because I think in season 4, they're going to crucify him.
Well, if you watch the trailer, there's nothing about this crucifixion.
The
But
crucifixion was the first scene that they found.
when we were in Portugal, and they were like playing something about season 4, and Jonathan Roumie was there, it said that there were 7 seasons
yeah.
planned.
They go after.
Well, I know, because
yeah.
they're the chosen, the Messiah.
And they're gonna go
Okay.
like fake pearl. I don't know.
But
I know, we have to talk about the Bible.
story that how they died.
well, but
Oh,
Okay,
dear
well,
Lord.
oh my, okay.
Okay.
Backtracking.
It just went dark.
In season 2, there's that one episode where it's like the Sabbath or whatever, and Jesus is like, well, we're gonna go to this temple, and they're like, but bigger temple,
Right.
like right there, and he's like, no, we're gonna go to this one,
Right.
and they walk in, like as the rabbi is reading, and the guy with the shriveled hand.
Right.
But Jesus walks in, and the rabbi kind of looks up, and then they all just keep filing. And the guy gets confused, and so then Jesus sits down and starts talking to this guy, and the rabbi is like, "Will you please be quiet?"
Right.
So then Jesus heals him, and the rabbi is like, it would take, like, only God could do something like that. And Jesus goes, interesting point. And then they all just kind of walk out. And
Get it. But, I mean, to their defense, would we even get it either?
Yeah.
I mean, I got to give them credit. Like,
And then even,
Jenkins says that season 6 will spend its entirety on crucifixion.
oh, it's so sad.
but even the special Christmas episode that's not technically a part of The Chosen, but it's
Right.
about Jesus' birth.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really beautiful episode because it just focuses on this one shepherd who isn't really understood by the rest of them, and they kind of push him around and bully him. But in the end, he's the one who gets to hold Jesus, even though they're all clamoring to do it, because he was the one who gave Mary and Joseph that little extra help that they needed.
Mm-hmm.
He was able to hold the Messiah.
So we just have to remember, despite bullying, go the extra mile.
Yeah.
Okay, we're almost at an hour. So Dallas, Jonathan, all the other actors and actresses, thank you so much for making the Bible come alive for all of us and giving us a new insight into it. Okay, we all have to say who our favorite apostle is.
That's character.
All right, who's your favorite character?
My favorite is Mary Magdalene.
Okay, Vincent?
Come back to me, Ostel.
Wow. All right, Sophia's going with Philip. Oh, I'm gonna have to say Matthew. I have a little bit of OCD, and so I really appreciate him a lot and his attention to detail. But yeah, Matthew. I'm just gonna go with Matthew.
That's a really hard question, but I think I'm going to go with Philip as well.
All right, cool. All right, so we're going to close, and Sophia, you're going to close us today. And tell them all the things.
After listening to this podcast, you like, subscribe, email us at versoaltopodcast@gmail.com. Follow us on Instagram and YouTube. Listen to us on, I think, every podcast platform except Apple Podcasts. Oh, Mary, Grace,
What is Jesus,
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and
Amen. Dear Georgia Forsad,
pray for us.
We should watch the season 4 trailer.
Okay, say goodbye.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.